Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a great Monday morning so far. Now, we have not been doing our daily reading of a novel for maybe the last few weeks. And so today we are going to revive that venture. We are going to be reading another novel. And this time, I found this one in my library that I had read already, but I want to share the reading with you. It is called Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie. And I'm going to be reading for you here. It says Agatha Christie is the most popular mystery writer. Yes, I always love the mysteries by Agatha Christie. With over 2 billion copies of her books in print, her genius for detective fiction is unparalleled, and she is truly the one and only queen of crime. So now that you have heard that, you know what to expect in this book called Taken at the Flood. So come with me, guys. You know, I like to read, and so when I read, I want you to hear what I'm reading so that we can all enjoy it together. I'm tired of enjoying my reading just by myself. So I'm sharing this one with you as well. And over the last few months, we have shared some very interesting books like Dirty Little Secrets and Julie Garwood, Grace Under Fire. We read so many of them. We read Tuesdays with Maury, several books. So those of you who have been here, we have enjoyed each other's company immensely as I have read these books. Today we are going to be reading Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie. Okay, so let us begin. Oops. In every club there is a club bore. The Coronation Club was no exception. And the fact that an air raid was in progress made no difference to normal procedure. Major Porter, late Indian Army, rustled his newspaper and cleared his throat. Everyone avoided his eye, but it was no use. I see it's got the announcement of Gordon Claude's death in the Times, he said, discreetly put, of course. On October 5th, result of enemy action. No address given. As a matter of fact, it was just around the corner from my place, one of those big houses on top of the Campden Hill. I can tell you it shook me up a bit. I'm a warden, you know. Claude had only just got back from the States. He had been over on that government purchase business. Got married while he was over there. A young widow, young enough to be his daughter. Hmm. Mrs. Underhay, as a matter of fact, I knew her first husband out of Nigeria. Major Porter paused. Nobody displayed any interest or asked him to continue. Newspapers were held up sedulously in front of faces, but it took more than that to discourage Major Porter. He always had long histories to relate, mostly about people whom nobody knew. Interesting, said Major Porter firmly, his eyes fixed absently on a pair of extremely pointed patent leather shoes, a type of footwear of which he profoundly disapproved. As I said, I'm a warden. Funny business, this blast. Never know what it's going to do. Blew the basement in and ripped off the roof. First floor practically wasn't touched. 6 people in the house, 3 servants, married couple, and a housemaid. Gordon Claude, his wife, and his wife's brother. They were all down in the basement, except the wife's brother, ex-commando fellow. He preferred his own comfortable bedroom on the first floor. and by Jove, he escaped with a few bruises. The three servants were all killed by blast. Gordon Claude was buried. They dug him out, but he died on the way to the hospital. His wife was suffering from blast, hadn't gotten a stitch of clothing on her, but she was alive. They think she'd pull through. She'll be a rich widow. Gordon Claude must have been worth well over $1 million. Again, Major Porter paused. His eyes had traveled up from the painted leather shoes, striped trousers, black coat, egg-shaped head, and colossal mustaches. Foreign, of course. That explained the shoes. Really, really, thought Major Porter. What's the club coming to? Can't get away from foreigners, even here. This separate train of thought ran alongside his narrative. The fact that the foreigner in question appeared to be giving him full attention did not abate Major Porter's prejudice in the slightest. She can't be more than about 25, he went on, and a widow for the second time? Or, at any rate, that's what she thinks. He paused, hoping for curiosity, for a comment. Not getting it, he nevertheless went doggedly on. Matter of fact, I've got my own ideas about that. Queer business. As I told you, I knew her first husband, Underhay. Nice fellow, district commissioner in Nigeria at one time. Absolutely dead keen on his job, first-class chap. He married this girl in Cape Town. She was out there with some touring company, very down on her luck and pretty helpless and all that. Listen to the poor old Underhay raving about his district and the great wide open spaces, and breathed out, wasn't it wonderful? And how she wanted to get away from everything. Well, she married him and got away from it. He was very much in love, poor fellow, but the thing didn't tick over from the first. She hated the bush and was terrified of the natives and was bored to death. His idea of life was to go round to the local and meet the theatrical crowd and talk shop. Solitude due in the jungle wasn't at all her cup of tea. Mind you, I never met her myself. I heard all this from poor old Underhay. It hit him pretty hard. He did the decent thing, sent her home and agreed to give her a divorce. It was just after that I met him. He was all on the edge and in the mood. When a man's got to talk, he was a funny old-fashioned kind of chap in some ways. Oh, an RC. And he didn't care for divorce. He said to me, there are other ways of giving a woman her freedom. Now look here, old boy, I said, don't go doing anything foolish. No woman in the world is worth putting a bullet through your head. He said that wasn't his idea at all, but I'm a lonely man, he said, got no relations to bother about me. If a report of my death gets back, that will make Rosalina with a widow, which is what she wants. And what about you? I said. Well, he said, maybe a Mr. Enoch. Maybe a Mr. Enoch Arden will turn up somewhere 1,000 miles or so away and start life anew. Might be awkward for her someday, I warned him. Oh no, he says, I'd play the game. Robert Underhay would be dead all right. Well, I didn't think any more of it, but 6 months later, I heard that Underhay had died of fever up in the bush somewhere. His natives were a trustworthy lot, and they came back with a good circumstantial tale and a few last words scrawled in Underhay's writing, saying they had done all they could for him, and he was afraid he was pegging out, and praising up his headman. That man was devoted to him, and so were all the others. Whatever he told them to swear to, they would swear to. So there it is. Maybe Underhay's buried up country in the midst of equatorial Africa, but maybe he isn't. And if he isn't, Mrs. Gordon Cloud may get a shock one day and serve her right. I say, I never met her, but I know the sound of a little gold digger. She broke up poor old Underhay all right. It's an interesting story, I tell you. Major Porter looked around rather wistfully for confirmation of this assertion. He met two bored and fishy stares, the half-averted gaze of young Mr. Mellon and the polite attention of Hem Hercule Perriot. Then a newspaper rustled, and a grey-haired man with a singular impassive face rose quietly from his armchair by the fire and went out. Major Porter's jaw dropped, and young Mr. Mellon gave a faint whistle. Now you have done it, he remarked. Know who that was? God bless my soul, Mr. Major Porter, in high agitation. Of course, I don't know him intimately, but we are acquainted. Jeremy Cloud, isn't it? Gordon Cloud's brother. Under my word, how extremely unfortunate. If I'd had an idea. He's a solicitor, said young Mr. Mellon. Betty sues you for slander or defamation of character or something. For young Mr. Mellon enjoyed creating alarm and despondency in such places as it was not forbidden by the Defence of the Realm Act. Major Porter continued to repeat in an agitated manner, most unfortunate, most unfortunate. It will be all over Wormsley Heath by this evening, said Mr. Mellon. That's where all the Clouds hang out. They'll set up late discussing what action to take. But at that moment, all the clears sounded, and young Mr. Mellon stopped being malicious and tenderly piloted his friend Hercule Perriot out into the street. Terrible atmosphere, these clubs, he said. The most crashing collection of all bores. Porter's easily the worst, though. His description of the Indian rope trick takes 3/4 of an hour, and he knows everybody whose mother ever passed through Poona. This was in the autumn of 1944. It was in late spring of 1946 that Hercule Perriot received a visit. Hercule Perriot was sitting at his neat writing desk on the pleasant May morning when his manservant George approached him and murmured deferentially, "There is a lady, sir, asking to see you." "What kind of a lady?" Perriot asked cautiously. He always enjoyed the meticulous accuracy of George's descriptions. "She would be aged between 40 and 50, I should say, sir. Untidy and somewhat artistic in appearance, good walking shoes, brooches, a tweed coat and shirt, but a lace blouse, some questionable Egyptian beads, and a blue chiffon scarf." Perriot shuddered slightly. "I do not think," he said, "that I wish to see her. Shall I tell her, sir, that you are indispositioned?" Perriot looked at him thoughtfully. "You have already, I gather, told her that I am engaged on important business and cannot be disturbed." George coughed again. "Sir?" She said, "Sir, that she had come up from the country specially and did not mind how long she waited." Perriot sighed. "She should never struggle against the inevitable," he said. "If a middle-aged lady wearing shorn Egyptian beads has made up her mind to see the famous Hercule Perriot and has come up from the country to do so, nothing will deflect her. She will sit there in the hall till she gets her way. Show her in, George." George retreated, returning presently to announce formally, "Mrs. Cloud." The figure in the worn tweeds and the floating scarf came in with a beaming face. She advanced to Periot with an outstretched hand, all her bead necklaces swinging and clinging. Periot, she said, I have come to you under spirit guidance. Periot blinked slightly. Indeed, madame, perhaps you will take a seat and tell me. He got no further. Both ways, Periot. With the automatic writing and with the Ouija board, it was the night before last. Madame Alvaria, wonderful woman she is, and I were using the board. We got the same initials repeated, HP, HP, HP. Of course, I did not get the true significance at once. It takes, a little time. One cannot, on this earthly plane, see clearly. I racked my brains thinking of someone with those initials. I knew it must connect up with the last science. Really a most poignant one, but it was some time before I got it. And then I bought a copy of Picture Post, Spirit Guidance again, you see, because usually I buy the New Statesman. And there you were, a picture of you, and described, and an account of what you had done. It is wonderful, don't you think, Periot, how everything has a purpose. Clearly, you are the person appointed by the guides to elucidate this matter. Periot surveyed her thoughtfully. Strangely enough, the thing that really caught his attention was that she had remarkably shrewd light blue eyes. They gave point, as it were, to her rambling method of approach. And what, Mrs. Cloud, is that right? He frowned. I seem to have heard the name somewhere, some time ago. Good morning, AG. How are you doing, my love? Good to see you. Good to see you. She nodded vehemently. My poor brother-in-law, Gordon, immensely rich and often mentioned in the press. He was killed in the Blitz over a year ago. A great blow to all of us. My husband is his younger brother. He is a doctor, Dr. Lionel Cloud. Of course, she added, lowering her voice. He has no idea that I'm consulting you. He would not approve. Doctors, I find, have a very materialistic outlook. The spiritual seems to be strangely hidden from them. They pin their faith on science. But what I say is, what is science? What can it do? There seemed to Hercule Periot to be no answer to the question other than a meticulous and painstaking description embracing Pasteur, Lister, Humphrey Davy's safety lamp, the convenience of electricity in the home, and several hundred other kindred items. But that, naturally, was not the answer Mrs. Lionel Cloud wanted. In actual fact, her question, like so many questions, was not really a question at all. It was a mere rhetorical gesture. Hercule Periot contented himself with inquiring in the practical manner. In what way do you believe I can help you, Mrs. Cloud? Do you believe in the reality of the spirit world, Periot? I am a good Catholic, said Periot cautiously. Mrs. Cloud waved aside the Catholic faith with a smile of pity. Blind. The church is blind, prejudiced, foolish, not welcoming the reality and beauty of the world that lies behind this one. At 12 o'clock, said Hercule Periot, I have an important appointment. It was a well-timed remark. Mrs. Cloud leaned forward. I must come to the point at once. Would it be possible for you, Periot, to find a missing person? Periot's eyebrows rose. It might be possible, yes, he replied cautiously. But the police, my dear Mrs. Cloud, could do so a great deal more easily than I could. They have all the necessary machinery. Mrs. Cloud waved away the police as she had waved away the Catholic Church. No, Mr. No, Emperiot, it is to you I have been guided by those beyond the veil. Now listen. My brother Gordon married some weeks before his death a young widow, a Mrs. Underhay. Her first husband, poor child, such a grief to her, was reported dead in Africa, a mysterious country, Africa, a mysterious continent. Perio corrected her. Possibly what part? She swept on. Central Africa, the home of voodoo, of the zombie. The zombie is in the West Indies. Mrs. Cloud swept on. Of black magic, of strange and secret practices, a country where a man could disappear and never be heard of again. Possibly, possibly, said Periot, but the same is true of Piccadilly Circus. Mrs. Cloud waved away Piccadilly Circus. Twice lately, Emperiot, a communication has come through from a spirit who gives his name as Robert. The message was the same each time. Not dead. We were puzzled. We know no Robert. Asking for further guidance, we got this. Are you? Are you? Are you? Then tell Robert. Robert? We ask. No, from Robert are you? That does the U understand. What does the U stand for? Then M. Period. The most significant answer came. Little boy blue, ha ha ha. You see? No, said Period. I do not. She looked at him pityingly. She has a way with words. Pityingly. The nursery rhyme, Little Boy Blue, under the haycock fast asleep. Under hay, you see. Period nodded. He forbore to ask why. If the name Robert could be spelled out, the name Underhay could not have been treated the same way. And why it had been necessary to resort to a kind of cheap Secret Service spy jargon. And my sister-in-law's name is Rosaline, finished Mrs. McLeod triumphantly. You see? Confusing all these R's, but the meaning is quite plain. Tell Rosaline that Robert Underhay is not dead. Aha! And did you tell her? Mrs. Cloud looked slightly taken aback. Well, no. You see, well, people are so skeptical. Rosaline, I am sure, would be so. And then, poor child, it might upset her, wondering, where he was and what he was doing. Besides projecting his voice through the ether. Quite so, a curious method, surely, of announcing his safety. Aha! Emperiot, you are not an initiate. And how do we know what the circumstances are? Poor Captain Underhay, or is it Major Underhay? Maybe a prisoner somewhere in the dark interior of Africa. But if he could be found, Emperiot, if he could be restored to his dear young Rosaline, think of her happiness. Oh, Emperiot, I have been sent to you. Surely you will not refuse the behest of the spiritual world. Period looked at her reflectingly. My fees, he said softly, are very expensive. I may say enormously expensive, and the task you suggest would not be easy. Oh dear, but surely it is most unfortunate. I and my husband are very badly off indeed. Actually, my own plight is worse than that of my dear husband. I bought some shares under spirit guidance, and so far they have proved very disappointing. In fact, quite alarming. They have got right down and are now, I gather, practically unsaleable. She looked at him with dismayed blue eyes. I have not dared to tell my husband. I simply tell you in order to explain how I'm situated. But surely, dear Emperiot, to reunite a young husband and wife, it is such a noble mission. Note nobility, chere madame, will not pay steamer and railway and airfare travels. Now, will it cover the cost of long telegrams and cables? I guess not. And the interrogations of witnesses? I guess not. But if he is found, if Captain Underhay is found alive and well, then, well, I think I may safely say that once that was accomplished, there would be no difficulty about reimbursing you. Aha! He is rich. Then this Captain Underhay. No. Well, no. But I can assure you, I can give you my word that the money situation will not present difficulties. Slowly, Periot shook his head. I am sorry, madame. The answer is no. He had a little difficulty in getting her to accept that answer. When she had finally gone away, he stood lost in thought, frowning to himself. He remembered now why the name of Cloud was familiar to him. The conversation at the club the day of the air raid came back to him. The booming, boring voice of Major Porter going on and on and on, telling a story to which nobody wanted to listen. He remembered the rustle of a newspaper and Major Porter's suddenly dropped jaw and expression of consternation. But what worried him was trying to make up his mind about the eager middle-aged lady who had just left him. The glib spiritualistic patter, the vagueness, the floating scarves, the chains and amulets jingling around her neck, and finally, slightly at variance with all this, that sudden shrewd glint in the pair of pale blue eyes. Just why exactly did she come to me? He said to himself. And what, I wonder, has been going on in... He looked down at the card on his desk, Wormsley Vale. We will find out what's going on in Wormsley Vale when we come back, my friends. This is... Oh no. 11... 12:30. Okay, let's finish the prologue. I didn't realize it. It was exactly 5 days later that he saw a small paragraph in an evening paper. It referred to the death of a man called Enoch Arden at Wormsley Vale, a small old world village about 3 miles from the popular Wormsley Heath golf course. Hercule Periot said to himself again, I wonder what has been going on in Wormsley Vale. That is the end of the prologue to this book. We are going to be moving on to chapter 1 when we come back tomorrow. When we come back tomorrow, we will move on to chapter 1 of the book, Taken at the Flood, written by it's an Agatha Christie novel. For those of you who like reading, if you love reading at all, like I do, I'm sure you must have come across an Agatha Christie novel before. Well, if you haven't, we are going to be reading this one together. So come back and join me tomorrow when we will read a chapter a day. A chapter a day keeps ignorance away. That one sounds cool, but I just made it up. Okay, so when we come back tomorrow, we will continue the reading of the book Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie. Now I hope that you all join me tomorrow, and also join me tomorrow for the reading of the Bible. They say reading maketh a man. So I'm currently a woman, so I'm going to continue reading. If you know, you know. That's going to be it from me for this morning, my friends. Until next time, this is Trev from Treversence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great morning, everybody.